Robert Jaffray became the leader of an extremely productive missions outreach in the nation of India. He was very successful. Robert mastered the Chinese language and was a brilliant businessman. And so because of this, the Standard Oil Company wanted Robert to be their key representative in China. And they offered him a huge salary. Robert turned it down. They doubled it. He said no. So they sent him a one-line message. Jaffray, at any price. And Robert responded with these words. Your salary is too big. Or excuse me, your salary is big, but your job is just too small. His godly vision was too vast for anything that the Standard Oil Company could possibly offer him. He had a greater vision in mind, so he turned down an incredible income to serve God. That is the perspective of every parent who sits in this sanctuary today. We could have that same outlook, that same insight of Robert Jaffray, in the sense that as moms and dads, we have been given the greatest job in all the world, and we don't get paid a penny to do it. And that job is to shape the hearts and minds of the next generation of human beings by investing into the lives of the little ones that live in our particular homes. Now, Psalms 127 and 128 offer us some basic building blocks when it comes to establishing a strong and effective home that will leave a great legacy for tomorrow. So the first building block is simply this. Say it with me. Happy is the family whose foundation is the Lord. Look at Psalm 127, verses 1 to 2. Then Psalm 128, 1 to 2. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman keeps awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors, for God gives to his beloved even in his sleep. Psalm 128. How blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. When you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy, and it will be well with you. So happy is the one whose foundation is God, but hassled are the parents who forget to focus on God, and many Christian parents forget that focus in their lifetime. This is why 3 times in the opening verses of Psalm 127, the word pops up, vain, vain, vain. Solomon likes that term. It's the term that sets the theme for his book Ecclesiastes. It's established in the 1st chapter and the 2nd verse, a familiar word to many of you. Vanity of vanities, it's all vain. He is saying it's useless, it's purposeless, it's worthless if you're investing into a home without the glory of God. It's not a home, it's a garbage heap, it's a waste of time. And Christian parents do that. I knew of a couple many years ago in a church I pastored. They were just this ideal couple, cute couple with darling boys, and they loved the Lord, and their house was just a mile or so from the church. They were there every Sunday during the week at Bible studies, committed to Christ. But the husband got this itching. He had to have a bigger home, a nicer home, and he couldn't afford one here in Orange County, so he had to go out to the country and move there. The wife did not want it, the kids did not want it, but the husband had to have it. He couldn't even afford it, but he was hoping that if his job continued to increase the way it was, eventually they could afford that home. So they made the move out there, and his job increase did not occur. So they had to sell the wife's car, and she became a prisoner in this beautiful home, stuck there all day with her kids, never able to get out. And they never saw Dad because he was working more and more and more hours in an attempt to afford the home, driving many hours every day just to get to work and to return to his house. And eventually it all fell apart. This story happens again and again and again in the lives of so many people because they're chasing after a dream that God never gave them. The dream is to have a house. That house is fine if your priorities are in line. If your priorities have to be shifted to get the house, you better forget it because God won't bless it. Gentlemen, your wife does not want a beautiful home. She wants an available husband. And so many wives don't have their husbands. I was reading just recently about Matthew McConaughey, the favorite actor, and his relationship with his bride. They're married and they have 3 children. He's out making 4 movies right now at one time. And his wife said, "You're never home. I want you home." His response, "You should be grateful for the life I'm giving you." And her response is, "I never signed up to be a single mom, nor did any mother." And yet some moms remain single moms because the dad traces the habit trail of Psalm 127 and verse 2. It's vain to rise up early, to retire late, to eat the bread of painful labors. Dad's seldom home because he's putting in extra hours at work. His philosophy is simple. Got to moonlight to see daylight, and the fact is the dawn never arrives. Because once you become accustomed to that lifestyle, you want more and more and more. And you buy into the media hype, and you give everything into making money, and there's no time left for relationships. And that's what breaks the heart the most. Little boy came to his dad in the middle of the summer. He said, "Dad, how about if we go in the backyard and build a tree house together?" He said, "It's a great idea, son, but I've been too busy to focus on that right now. I'll do it next Saturday." Next Saturday came. He asked once again, "How about some time to construct that tree house?" "Oh, I really wanted to, but we're going to have to put it off for another week." This went on week after week after week for 2 months. At the end of the second month, the boy was out playing with his friend in the front yard. He threw a football in the street, his friend did, and he ran to catch it, and a car hit him. And that little boy was lying in the hospital, kind of wavering between death and life. And with the little energy he had left, he said, "Well, Dad, I guess we'll never get a chance to build that tree house." Here's the principle. People must take priority over possessions and positions. One minister said, "The only thing you'll ever take with you to heaven are people. You won't take a nice home or a 6-figure salary. Only people." And when you begin to embrace this principle, when you start honoring God by investing into your family, then the end of verse 2 will ring true for you. Do you see that? It's a great statement. God gives to his beloved even in his sleep. You put your father first, you put your family first, and God will bless you financially while your head is resting on your pillow and you're sawing logs at 12 o'clock at night. Isn't that great? God's going to come through for you. He has the ability. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And then the opening of Psalm 128 will ring true for you. How blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. Not a slavish fear, but a spiritual fear, one of reverence and respect. Blessedness comes with that respect for God and his principles in regards to his family. Now, we've seen the word blessed pop up repeatedly in the book of Psalms. It's the word esher, and it means happy. And as we mentioned previously, whenever it pops up in the Hebrew, it's not singular, it's plural. It's not happy, it's happy, happy. That's the way God's word puts it, when your priorities are focused right. And it pops up again in the next verse, Psalm 128 and verse 2. When you shall eat of the fruit of your hands, you will be happy, and it will be well with you. Now, people are chasing for happiness today. They think that money will make them happy, and it won't. And they think, foolishly, that marriage will make them happy, and it won't. There was a woman named Barbara Hutton, who was a very famous lady of yesteryear, and she made the obituary column of Time magazine. She died at the age of 66 as a world-renowned celebrity. At the age of 12, she inherited $25 million from her grandfather. That's a lot of money for a preteen. And she assumed that money would make her happy. It didn't. Neither did her 7 marriages. She got married to a Laotian prince, a Lithuanian prince, a Russian prince, a Prussian count, and a Hollywood film star. And she was plagued with illness and sickness and eventually died of a heart attack. The last 3 years of her life, she locked herself like a recluse in her house. She was down to 80 pounds. And the newspapers referred to Barbara as the poor little rich girl. The poor little rich girl. She had everything. In the end, it amounted to nothing. True happiness is based on holiness. You say, Pastor, what's holiness? It's simple. It's a hankering in your heart to put God first above everything else when it comes to your personal life and your precious family. When that's your chief priority, you will experience happiness. Happy is the family whose foundation is the Lord. Principle 2, children are a cherished gift from the Lord. Psalm 127 and verse 3. Behold, children are a gift of the Lord, the fruit of the womb as a reward. Children are a gift from glory. They can be. Billy watched his newborn sister. They brought her home from the hospital, and she was screaming and kicking, and he said, "Where'd she come from?" And Dad said, "Heaven." He said, "No wonder they let her go." Children are a fabulous gift from God, but sometimes they don't look that way. If you're a young mom and you know those early years of late-night feedings and the various sicknesses that come into your children's life, and then you get through that, and then you step into the glorious, tumultuous teen years and see how happy that is. One father said, "My children are at the perfect age, too old to cry at night, too young to borrow my car." Well, I'm not sure if there's a perfect age, but there are preferred stages in a child's development. And as Christine and I look back on our 6 children, we realize that everyone in their own way was a unique and special gift. Now, here's the way it works. God temporarily transfers, and I want to underscore the word temporarily. God temporarily transfers the title deed for your child from heaven to earth. And He places that title deed in your hands for a short time. And then He takes the title deed away. As the child is now grown up, ready to step out and move out on their own. Wise is the parent who recognizes that the whole goal to proper biblical parenting is not restricting, but releasing. You are preparing them for the world and for a walk with God. And there's a whole generation today in the last 15 years of moms and dads, and I hate to say moms in particular, who have missed this insight. It's not only brought up in Christian books. I have seen just this past year 3 articles in Time magazine, which is not a Christian publication, dealing with this whole concept of overprotective parents and how it's destroying the next generation of children. Something that is radically unbiblical and completely contrary to what these Psalms talk about. Today we have a plethora of tiger moms, as they call them. Too much focus on the cubs, too much attention, too much control. You've heard the phrase, helicopter parents hovering over the children. Terrified. You better put on a helmet before you walk out street. Make sure you have on the elbow pads and the knee pads, and they've removed anything that is even halfway fun. I would have never been able to survive in this day and age. Everything's taken away, and it's not good. Kristen Van Ogtrop, in a recent article in Time magazine, wrote these words: "My son is in danger of his overprotective mother really screwing him up for life. Free-range parents," that's a great phrase, free-range parents are quick to point out that even though our society is actually safer than it's ever been, child abductions are incredibly rare and violent crime has declined 15% in the past 10 years, according to the FBI. But with all of this, the number of kids suffering from anxiety is skyrocketing today. We're producing a generation of children who will not be able to live without Xanax or Prozac because they're like this. They're afraid to make a decision. God's perspective is completely different. God's perspective is releasing those kids. Some of you know for the past year on Saturdays, oftentimes I take Avery Descalzo out to the beach and shove her into some waves. Her mom sits on the beach and she stands up and applauds when Avery gets a good one. Lance is running around in circles having fun. Now, once in a while, I'm sure that Mom is able to watch as Avery gets knocked off the board and shoved under by a few waves, and she comes up coughing. And salt water's coming out of her system. But she doesn't run down to the water and say, "That's it, Pastor, no more, no more. Come here, sweetheart, we have to go home." About a month ago or so, she took off in a wave, and she went straight down, and she kept going down. And she went down to the bottom of the ocean, and the board went up in the air. When she came up, bam, board hit her right in the head. It's bleeding a little bit. She had a big bump on her head. She looked at me, but fighting back the tears. I said, "You like to go in?" She goes, "Okay." We walked in, and she didn't come running down to meet her. She goes, "We'll put some ice on it. We'll be out next week." That's a good mom. That's a good mom. A good mom is a mom who learns to release the child to life and not restrict them. Do you see that in the next verse? Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. That's God's picture of raising and rearing your kids. You've got the bow, they're the arrow. Back in 1971, I took a PE class at Santa Ana College when I was attending there. I thought it'd be an easy one for 2 units. It was archery. You know, what's there to archery? Just pull it back, let it go. Well, I discovered that it's a little bit more than that. Archery is actually an exacting skill. And the key is in how you let your arrow go. The amount of tension on the bow, the position of the arms and shoulders, the release, where you fix your eyes in relationship to the tip of that arrow, all that is very significant in how it hits the center of the target. Every parent is an archer. View yourself in that perspective. You're spending 18 years positioning your arms, your shoulders, holding that bow straight and aiming right towards the center of the bullseye. And you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And when the moment comes, and you know when the moment comes, your son or daughter will speak it out. God will relay it to your heart. It's time to let him fly. You don't just pull back and let it go. There are many activities and areas that we could camp on today, but for time's sake, I want us to center on the subject of sensitivity. I think a sensitive parent makes a great release. Diane Loomis put it this way: if I had my child to raise all over again, I would finger paint more and point the finger less. Believe you me, that's great insight. I would do less correcting and more connecting. I'd take my eyes off the watch, and I would watch with my eyes. I would care to know less and know to care more. I like this one. It's always been my philosophy. I'd stop playing serious, and I would seriously play. I love that line. I'd do more hugging and less tugging. I'd be firm less often and affirm much more. That's a sensitive parent. If you've ever shot arrows before, you've experienced what an archer calls string slap. The moment the arrow is released from the bow, the string slaps against your wrist. And every good parent, at some point, will experience heart slap when the release occurs. Christine and I will go through that the 16th of September when we release Matthew to go back east for a long time, United States Navy. 2001, in the course of 1 week, I released my 2 older daughters. Carla goes to New York University, and then days later I send Laurel to the University of Hawaii, thousands of miles away. Somehow I knew in my heart that afternoon, both afternoons, that I would seldom see them from that point on, and I was right. For the past 14 and a half years, they've lived thousands of miles away from me. And so when I gave them the kiss and the final goodbye, I got in my car and I wept. And I prayed that the release was as straight as I possibly could make it. Oh God, help them by your grace to hit the bullseye of your target. That's been my prayer ever since. Every parent releases their child, and every parent has a quiver. Verse 5. How happy is the person whose quiver is full of them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. There are different size quivers, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess the larger the quiver, the more livelier the activities are in the home. Quiet reigned in the neighborhood when a family of 10 went on vacation. And a few days later, the family next door received a postcard asking, "How are you enjoying our vacation?" And we need a postcard from the family across the street from us. They're a wonderful Christian family. They have, I think, 10 kids in their family. And every day that door opens, there is one child laughing and one child crying every single day. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to live in that house. Although I have an idea because I grew up across the street from the Nellises, who had 7 boys and 2 girls, and they were throwing kids through the windows, tossing the younger brothers and sisters off the top of the roofs, breaking all the toys before the children even woke up on Christmas morning to examine what was brought to them. But today they're all adults, all responsible members of society, and they love each other a great deal as a family. God brings different quivers. He brings them at different times. Some years ago, there was a pastor friend I had who related to me that basically had released their last children into college, and then he discovered that his wife, at the age of 50, was pregnant with twins. Oh boy, 2 more for your quiver. Psalm 128 and verse 3. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Now, The first thing that a vine does is to cling. It puts out its tendrils, takes hold of the supporting trellis, and it clings to support life. The worst thing that a parent could ever do is to cling to a child. Happens frequently in abusive homes, where there's been alcohol abuse or drug abuse or physical abuse or some type of emotional abuse. That the parent who sees themselves a victim in the role will often cling to the child and ask that child to be their emotional support, and it messes them up emotionally for life. So don't do that. But it's biblical and it's healthy and it's wonderful to cling to the one that God has given you as a life partner. That's the person that God's called you to cling to. That's the picture you want to present to your children. Floyd and Violet Hartwig learned that lesson. They were childhood sweethearts, married for 67 years. During the Second World War, Floyd sent Violet 131 letters in 2 years. Letters like this one. I heard our song the other evening, sweetheart, and it made me so homesick for you. I hope you got a record of it. I can't wait to come home and to listen to the words and hold you in my arms. Couple had 3 children, lived on a 20-acre ranch as farmers. At the end of his life, Floyd battled with colon and bladder cancer, and Violet suffered from fits of dementia and strokes. But the children say that their deteriorating condition only strengthened the bond of their relationship. At one point, the 3 kids, Donna, Kenneth, and Carol, planned to admit Mother to a hospice because her condition was going downhill fast. And then upon taking Dad for a checkup, they discovered his condition was also deteriorating at about the same rate. So they brought them both into hospice at the same time. But a week later, they were both at home, in hospital beds in the living room, side by side. February the 11th of this year, Floyd passed away holding Violet's hand. And 5 hours later, she went with her husband. See, that type of clinging communicates a clear message to the children. In fact, let me put it this way. The finest gift you could ever give your child is to love your marriage partner. Because the whole goal of raising children is to get them ready for the arrow release. How are they going to know what kind of husband and wife to be to their mate someday if you don't show them by the way you treat your partner? Cling to that person. Love them. And communicate to the children what kind of husband and wife to be someday. Psalm 128, second part of verse 3. Your wife's going to cling to you, and you should cling to her. And then your children, if you do it, will be like olive plants around your table. See, aged olive trees will often be surrounded by the young, vigorous shoots that kind of pop up and surround the original tree. And this is the picture that we have presented in this psalm. Affectionate children at the end of the parent's life gather around the good and godly parents to give emotional, spiritual, sometimes even financial support. The point is the parents have done a great job in raising these kids, and their kids are returning the favor with love and compassion. And if you spend time with them today, it seems to me the promise is they'll be there for you tomorrow. But if you don't spend time with them today, good luck finding them when you need them tomorrow. It's going to be hard in this day and age because there are many parents who live in a society who worship possessions and positions above people. And it's got to the place, particularly in America today, that stay-at-home moms do not rate well amongst society. They're considered second-rate and second class. We should be applauding them because they are the ones who are investing their hearts and lives into shaping the generation of tomorrow. And then we have many moms who, due to financial stress, feel forced to work outside the home. And then after all that labor is done, they come home to wash, to care, to discipline, to direct, to help with the homework. Theirs is a thankless task. And they need to be applauded as well because they too are shaping a new generation and putting in more hours and time than the average person realizes. God's promise is if you invest in the right way with your children, it's going to pay off tomorrow. Psalm 128, verses 4 and 5. Behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. The Lord bless you from Zion, and may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Zion is the political heart of Jerusalem. Zion is the citadel of David. Zion one day will be the capital of the world. Amen. When Jesus comes back to rule, no one's going to give a rip about Hong Kong, about Moscow, about Zurich, or about Washington, D.C. Those will be peanut towns, no-count places. Zion is where Jesus will reign. Zion is where Jesus will rule. And from the top of Mount Zion in Jerusalem, he will set the pattern. And so whenever you come across Zion in the Old Testament, it's a picture of strength and security and power and purpose. And he's using the city to give a picture of what happens in the godly parent's life when they invest wisely into the spouse and the children. They become like Zion. They last, and they stand, and they leave a legacy throughout their entire life. God protects that family like he will protect Zion. Verse 6. Indeed, may you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel. From bride and groom to grandparents in just a few short years. Oh, time flies so fast, doesn't it? It starts with releasing your kids to marriage. You know, I don't think it's as hard to release a son as it is to release a daughter. Because, you know, when you take a daughter and you release her to a man, you have no idea how that man is going to treat that beautiful girl that you've raised to be a princess. Jay Kessler, who is the president of Youth for Christ several years ago, said, the only way I could describe marrying off a lovely daughter to her groom is that it's like taking a $300,000 Stradivarius violin and giving it to a gorilla. And you have no idea what the gorilla is going to do. I received a call this past week from my younger daughter, Laurel, and she said, Dad, Sean popped the question. He handed me the ring, and we're going to get married. We want you and Christina to come out and perform the wedding. And so, you know, he's in the military. He's a strong guy. I'm releasing my daughter to a gorilla. And just a week before, her sister, Carla, got the ring from a guy named Richard. And so 2 girls married to 2 gorillas. The nice thing is possibly sometimes they produce gorilla grandchildren. Someone said one of the mysteries of life is how the boy who wasn't good enough to marry your daughter could become the father of the smartest grandchild in the whole world. Isn't that amazing? And of course, the whole promise in this verse is that you're going to see your children's children, grandkids. Someone has said, and I believe it's true, that children and grandparents are natural allies. That's true for me. I know that my grandkids love Nana, but I know they really love me. And the reason is because I'm their ally. I had no problem when my kids were little taking them into the room, explaining to them what they did was wrong, and giving them 3 firm swats. I could do that at any point in time and never broke my heart because I knew I loved those kids. I remember when Matthew was 5 one time. I was out at a Bible study and he was acting up in the house, and Christina said, "Do you want me to spank you, Matthew?" She goes, "You can spank me, Mom, but don't let Dad spank me. He hits hard." That's true. Because I love hard, and I laugh hard, and I hit hard. But I never had a kid say, "I don't want you to be my dad," because they all knew that I loved them. I had absolutely no problem spanking any of the children in our house. And I have absolutely no desire to spank any of those grandkids. When they do something radical and they are in trouble, I just turn my head and laugh. My job is to be their friend and their partner in crime. I am there for fun. It's not your job to raise your grandchildren. It's your job to have fun with your grandchildren. God gives them to me to tickle them, to tease them, to toss them up in the air, to chase them around the house, and just to torture them in a million different ways. And to hold them in my arms and to tell them that I love them. Grandparents are wonderful. Children are wonderful. God said they're a gift from me to you. A gift for you to enjoy. I read about a little boy who never said a word for the first 6 years of his life. Not a word. And then one day, after his parents served him cocoa, he spoke up. He said, "This hot chocolate's no good." "Oh, I can't believe he's speaking." And Dad said, "What took you so long to talk?" He said, "Well, up till now, everything's been fine." And that's the question of the hour. Is everything okay in your home today? Are you spending quality time with your spouse? Are you making meaningful memories with your children? If the answer is no, the time to start is now. Because you know they won't be young forever. D.L. Stewart writes these words. We call it basement basketball. I suppose if my old man had been able to hug me once in a while, basement basketball would have never been invented. But you see, my old man was not the hugging type. He was just my old man. Not my father or my pop or my daddy. When he came home from work, there was grease under his fingernails and metal chips in his hair, and work clothes smelled of oil. And then he would shower and change and eat dinner, and then he would sit in his chair and read his paper like Archie Bunker, and he never, ever hugged me. Just wasn't his style. I suppose that his old men never hugged him either. Came from a long line of old men who didn't hug each other. On the day I graduated from college, he held out his hand, and I shook it. And I could still remember the way it felt. I think that was the last time my old man and I ever touched. So when I became an old man, Hugging my first child was easy. That's because she was a girl. I mean, fathers have always been allowed to hug their daughters. It's practically a requirement for the job. Even when our first boy was born, there was a certain amount of hugging for a while. There was that hug when I went off to work, and a hug and a kiss on the nights when I came home for bed. And sometimes he would sit quietly on my lap, and we'd read a book or watch TV or just talk, and I would just rest my hand on his arm or leg and feel the magical blend of softness and strength that is present in a growing child. But then he grew too much. He was 8 when the kisses stopped, and then afterwards there were no more hugs. He's just too big for that stuff. Too old. Oh, there were hugs and kisses from Mom, lifetime of supply for her. But for his old man, he just reached the age of, well, good night, Dad. See, I wanted to stop him the first time he said that. I wanted to pull him back and put my arms around his shoulders and hold him with all the love of my heart and whisper, son, you'll never be too big for me to hug. But I didn't. And I couldn't. Because I didn't know how. That's why I invented basement basketball. It's a silly game, really. It's a game for which the rules are not very well defined or the equipment even suitable. It's played with the pink beach ball and a clothes basket perched on a bench in the basement. Sometimes the clothes basket has to be empty before we could use it, and frequently the game is interrupted by a shout from the laundry room and a lady demanding to know why her clean clothes are in a pile on the floor, because basement basketball is not her favorite game. We have 4 of us that play it, 12-year-olds on my team and his little brothers on the opposite team. And to make it more fair, our team plays on its knees. The object is to get the ball into the closed basket, but that's not really the object at all. The game is kind of like basketball and hockey and a great deal like big-time wrestling. Sometimes there are spectacular shots, and sometimes paintings get knocked off the wall, and every once in a while, a little boy lands on the floor too hard, and there's a time for tears. But mostly there's a lot of grabbing and holding and illegal hugging. I like that. And at least once every game, 4 bodies will wind up in a large giggling pile in the middle of the basement carpet, and then a voice from upstairs shouts, "Take it easy," before someone gets hurt or something gets broken. But I'm not worried about those things. I'm only worried that someday, long before I'm ready for it to happen, my sons will be too big for basement basketball. Let's bow together. Are you closely connected to your children? Are you passionately pursuing a clinging relationship with your marriage partner? If you're weak in one of those areas, tell your spouse, tell your children one way in which you plan to change. And please tell them before the sun sets today. You know, God's created a wonderful family. It's a family that has plenty of aunts and uncles and parents and grandparents and children in it. It's a family of love called the church. It's a family that will last for eternity. And He wants every one of you to be a member of it. But there must come that point in time when you decide to release your heart and life to what James calls the Father of lights, the Father of glory who sent his Son to experience tremendous agony so that you could be part of his forever family. Today, he offers you a relationship with Jesus. And in your heart, you're thinking, that's what I need. I don't have that. I want to release my heart, my life, my future into his hands. I want to be part of this forever family. And so while no one's looking around, if that's your desire to release your life to Christ and become part of his family today, would you lift your hand good and high? And if so, I will pray with you to make that decision. You could do that right now. We want to thank you, Father, for the families that we've been given. And every family is not perfect. You know that. But you've called us to do the best that we can. To own up to our mistakes. To ask for forgiveness when we've blown it. To speak the truth. And to do all that we possibly can to reestablish broken relationships in our family. Help us to become strong men and women who invest into a family that we could enjoy throughout all eternity. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. This time we like to invite up a very special person who has faithfully served our congregation behind the scenes for many years. I'd like to ask if Gloria Segovia would come up at this time. Along with Ricky and Cynthia, the head of our deacon board.
Today we are up here to celebrate and thank Gloria for all the years of dedication and work she has given to the deacon board of this church. And now, because of health reasons, Gloria is now stepping down. Although, like most that have retired from deacons, you never really do. And already she has come forward to let me know if there's anything, she will be there for us. So we would like to honor you for the years you have served deacons in this church. Gloria Segovia, we love you and thank you for all you have done and will continue to do for Orange Coast Community Church.
Thank you, God.
No, I'm afraid I'm going to cry.
Thank
you. I love you all.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to stop serving.
Yeah, we love that.
No.
Thanks for that. Remain standing as the worship team comes to sing our final song.